First-time parents. 26M, 27F, help needed, preferably from other parents. Hello everyone. I'm not completely certain about what I wish to inquire, but I feel compelled to share my experience and see if anyone else can relate. I became pregnant early in my relationship. My partner appeared to be the man of my dreams, kind, caring, supportive, and everything I was searching for. We shared similar values and aspirations. I fell in love not only with him, but also with the future I envisioned we could build together. He represented my first positive relationship. He assisted me with cooking, took care of cleaning, and was sweet and affectionate. He instilled in me a belief in marriage and starting a family, which I had never considered with my previous partner. However, there was one concerning issue: his insecurities. He constantly sought reassurance regarding my love, my past, and my loyalty. I understood that this stemmed from his toxic previous relationship, where he had been cheated on, and I sympathized with him. Before we officially committed, I suggested he seek professional help because his insecurities were impacting our relationship, and my reassurances were only a temporary fix. He assured me he would address it, but he never followed through. When I became pregnant, his insecurities intensified, especially as my pregnancy influenced my sex drive. Concurrently, we faced financial difficulties as he lacked stable employment. Instead of seeking a new job when his hours were reduced, he held on, hoping that things would improve. This added unnecessary stress onto my shoulders, particularly since I was also preparing for the arrival of the baby. I managed the baby shower, set up the nursery, organized what we needed for the baby and the birth, among other tasks. I even encouraged him to research what to expect, but the only thing he seemed to grasp was that my sex drive was expected to return in the second trimester, and that I could resume intimacy 6 weeks postpartum. When our baby was born, he only took 4 days off because he had just started a new job and needed to contribute to our bills, prioritizing work above all else. I found myself handling everything alone: feeding, pumping, cleaning, changing diapers, comforting the baby, and managing the household. I was utterly exhausted, overwhelmed, and completely drained. I developed mastitis, and I often forgot to eat and care for myself. I was truly struggling. He remained oblivious. He would come home and complain about the messy house, my lack of affection, and the absence of intimacy. He was blind to my fatigue and the fact that I was utterly overwhelmed. His insecurities were still at the forefront, with constant questions like, "Do you still love me?" And "Why aren't you being affectionate?" And "Why do you look upset?" I want to clarify that I paid half of all the bills, despite being on maternity leave. It was not as if he was fully providing for us. In fact, at times he even owed me money. I was not only emotionally and physically drained, but also financially stressed. I pleaded with him to assist more during the night, but his idea of help was me waking up, tending to the baby, giving him the bottle to feed, and then me pumping, cleaning, and putting the baby back to sleep. I was still managing 95% of everything. Even in that situation, he remained fixated on his own needs. He was obsessed with understanding why I did not want to be intimate or affectionate. He could not recognize that I was suffering, feeling overwhelmed, and touched out. When he expressed interest in joining a fighting gym, I asked him to wait until things settled down, explaining that I could not juggle more responsibilities alone. He accused me of being controlling and not allowing him to pursue his interests, completely failing to see that I was barely coping. At 5.5 months postpartum, I returned to work full-time. My mornings are spent managing the baby's routine and preparing for work. I wake the baby, bathe him, feed him, make him breakfast, play with him, organize his meals for the day, and then work a full day. I come home and repeat the process for the nighttime routine. On weekends, I prepare meals for the baby for the week and handle grocery shopping. My partner works long hours, but he also opts to go to the gym after work for his personal time, which I understand, so he is rarely available to help. The only time I have for myself is about an hour after the baby goes to sleep, which I use for dinner, showering, and preparing for bed. I also wake up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym, as that is the only time I can manage, and I need to go before my partner leaves for work at 5:30 a.m. I am utterly worn out. I love my child deeply, but I am carrying an overwhelming burden emotionally, physically, and financially. My partner owes me $3,000 that has accumulated over the past year. I do not feel supported by him, and his insecurities and lack of understanding regarding my struggles are genuinely affecting me. I feel as though I am drowning. I am unsure of what to do and how much more I can endure. I have attempted to explain this to him numerous times. He understands for about a week, contributes more, and then reverts to his old ways. When he finally comprehended how much I suffered during the early postpartum phase, he helped for 5 days. During that period, he cleaned up after work, which lifted a significant burden off my shoulders. For the first time, I felt less stressed, seen, and supported. My sex drive even returned. But then he became angry with me and accused me of taking advantage of him, claiming that I was expecting him to clean and that I was not even trying anymore and was purposely leaving a mess. I was cleaning as much as I could and never exploited his assistance. I could not believe he would even think that about me after everything I had endured. He helped for 5 days. What about the 17 months when I managed everything alone? Those 5 days of support made me realize how much better things could be if he genuinely understood and consistently helped. However, when he accused me of taking advantage of him, my sex drive disappeared once more. His inability to recognize the emotional impact of his actions on me leaves me feeling very disconnected. He frequently asks me if I still find him attractive because I do not want to engage in intimacy. I have explained that it has nothing to do with his physical appearance. I am attracted to him, but how he interacts with me and makes me feel is the reason I do not want to be touched. He also denies things he has done or said when he does not recall them and refuses to consider my perspective. At times, he even acts out of spite or pettiness. For instance, he did not say, "Bless you," when I sneezed because I failed to say it to him the night before, even though I did not even hear him sneeze. There are countless examples of this emotional immaturity and pettiness, making it feel endless. It is exhausting, and I feel incredibly isolated in this. Yesterday, my partner was loading some items into the dishwasher, which was nice, while I was eating dinner. Our baby began crying and got stuck, so I stood up to assist. My partner and I both hurried over. We usually make it a friendly competition to see who can arrive first just for fun. However, out of nowhere, my partner became upset and accused me of never allowing him to spend time with the baby. He claimed I do not let him wake the baby in the morning or put him down to sleep. I was genuinely taken aback. Here is the reality. If our baby wakes up at 5 a.m. because my partner is too loud while preparing for work, I do not let him go to get the baby because that would lead the baby to develop a habit of waking up at 5 a.m. He needs to rise at 6 a.m. for his routine. This is not about controlling him, it is about maintaining the baby's healthy schedule. At night, when my partner is home, he typically holds the baby while we pray and say goodnight. Then I am the one who holds him last and puts him down to sleep. We established this routine because whenever I attempted to hold him first, the baby would cry and want his dad. Afterward, however, he would prefer me to put him to sleep. This way, we both have our time with him, and it keeps the baby calm. Now, he is distorting this routine and using it against me, claiming that I am preventing him from spending time with our child. It is honestly absurd. We created this routine together because it benefited all of us, and now he is turning it against me as if I am the villain. I just do not understand. I could continue to elaborate because this is just one example of how he manipulates situations. It is exhausting and perplexing. I have been thinking a lot lately that I would be better off single, honestly, and that is not a pleasant feeling. Additionally, I do not want my son to grow up in a broken home. I genuinely believed my partner would not act this way, and I am shocked every day. I must mention that my partner does assist more than he did initially. He does cook dinner for me if he is home on weekends and has cleaned the house a few times, but still. Has anyone else gone through this? How did you manage? I am feeling incredibly isolated in this. Story 2. Wibta, if I complain to social services about my guardian. Buckle up, this is going to be a lengthy one. To begin with, I apologize for any potential errors. English is not my native language. For context, I am from Ukraine. My aunt, who is 52 years old, whom we'll refer to as Sarah, relocated to another country with her family nearly 3 years ago due to the war. Last year, she came to visit us for a few days. During her stay, she invited me, a 17-year-old female, to move in with her, or more specifically, to reside in the dormitory of the school her son, who is 16 years old and whom we will call Stephen, attends. After thoughtfully discussing it with my mother, I came to the conclusion that the benefits surpassed the possible drawbacks, so I consented. That summer, she formally became my legal guardian. Reflecting on that time, I would say the warning signs began to emerge even then. For instance, as a minor under guardianship, I was eligible to receive monthly financial assistance from the government. This arrangement could have been set up as early as August when I turned 16. Instead, I received my initial payment in November, after I had already reached the age of 17. Before proceeding, I need to clarify how the dormitory system at my school operates. First, residing in the dormitory is optional. For example, Stephen lives at home while I reside in the dorms. On weekends, students have the option to go home if they choose, but this is not mandatory. However, during extended weekends, when holidays last for 3 or more days, remaining in the dormitory is prohibited. Therefore, I used to visit my aunt and her family on weekends because I wanted to spend quality time with them. After all, Stephen and I were best friends as children. However, from the outset, it was made evident that I was not regarded as part of the family. I was expected to address Sarah formally as Mrs. Sarah, and was prohibited from calling her by her first name as if she were merely a friend. Meanwhile, Stephen distanced himself from me, but I did not think much of it, considering we both are now teenagers. That was how September unfolded. Everything seemed relatively fine. As October approached, Sarah's husband moved in from Ukraine. In response to a possible question, I am not aware of the specifics, but it undoubtedly was not legal. Regardless, that is when matters began to deteriorate. She frequently discussed me with her husband, sometimes behind my back in the kitchen, other times right in front of me. Regardless of my actions, she appeared to disapprove. I honestly do not know what she anticipated. Was I supposed to tidy up after the entire family while being explicitly informed that I was not a part of it? I simply behaved as a courteous guest. I cleaned up after myself, occasionally assisted with dinner, reminded her son about significant tests and assignments, as she had requested, attempted to initiate or engage in conversations, and made certain not to disturb anyone. But perhaps I was expected to do more. Upon realizing that my mere presence seemed to annoy them, I began spending all my time in her elder daughter's room, who is 28, studying for extended periods. At that point, I started contemplating the idea of staying in the dormitory over the weekends. However, once the long weekends commenced, I had no choice but to remain at Sarah's residence. Around the same time, my mother visited me with my younger brother. Later, she informed me that she had consistently asked Sarah if there were any issues concerning me, but Sarah always replied no. Nonetheless, on the evening before my mother returned to Ukraine, Sarah and Stephen confronted her in the kitchen and went through a list of all the things I had allegedly done wrong. Here are a few of them. At the beginning of the school year, I achieved a higher score on a math test than Stephen and mocked him for it. When my mom asked for clarification, Stephen responded, "Well, she was really pleased about getting an A." For context, Sarah had ceaselessly lauded Stephen, referring to him as a future mathematical prodigy because he was supposedly exceptional in STEM subjects. I always wear headphones. I continuously complain about Stephen. Sarah had specifically requested me back in September to inform her if her son experienced any challenges at school, so I was merely fulfilling her request. I use their household supplies, so either my mom should cover those costs or I need to bring my own. The list included items like toothpaste. For the record, I consistently use my own because I have dental problems, shampoo, toilet paper, and more. That was how October unfolded. Living with them became intolerable. I managed to spend one weekend in the dormitory, and it was the most tranquil time I had experienced in months. However, that was only because of circumstances beyond my control. Shortly before my mother's arrival, I broke my finger, so I believed it would be safer to stay at Sarah's place. However, it turned out that she needed to pick her son up after school before giving me the key to her apartment. Naturally, no one informed me about this in advance. After classes, I had lunch with my friends, during which phones are prohibited, so naturally I did not hear her call. She could have left the key with the secretary, the cleaning staff, or at the very least, she could have informed me beforehand. Instead, she simply yelled at me, stating it was all my fault and that I needed to resolve the issue myself. Consequently, I decided to stay in the dormitory and asked my mom to inform her, as I did not want to speak with her at that moment. Unsurprisingly, Sarah yelled at me for this as well. Then came the beginning of November. My mother had already returned to Ukraine. We had a 4-day weekend, so I had to stay at Sarah's. That evening, we had another argument during which she began insulting my mother. I was enraged. I immediately relayed this information to my mom, and for the following days, I either went out or focused on my studies to avoid interacting with my guardian. Looking back, I wish I had expressed my feelings more candidly. The day after this incident, my stepfather contacted Sarah. The conversation, after some small talk, unfolded somewhat like this. My wife returned from your place extremely upset. Did something happen? Was my name mentioned? Upon hearing these words, Sarah began shouting. My mother indicated that she could hear her perfectly from across the house. While it was difficult to decipher exactly what she was saying, in short, she was furious that I had not been communicating with them, that I would no longer be visiting for weekends, that I was not assisting as much as I had in the past, and again, something about me teasing her son. When my stepfather inquired why they had never brought these issues up before and what they expected us to do, Sarah's husband yelled on the phone, "She can get out of this house." And just like that, the following morning, I packed my belongings and went to stay at my friend's place. I had been expelled. As I mentioned earlier, I had a broken finger. Unfortunately, that same week, I had a follow-up doctor's appointment, but due to legal reasons, I could not attend alone as a minor. Sarah refused to take me, indicating that I could remove the cast myself. My mother had to pay her just to accompany me to the doctor. As I previously stated, shortly after this, I received my first payment from the government. Initially, my mother proposed a compromise. Sarah could take a quarter of the money, but in return, she would need to sign documents and accompany me when necessary. We did not wish to escalate matters legally because dealing with paperwork and courts is exhausting, and no one had the extra time for that. However, Sarah declined. Therefore, my mother calmly requested that she submit a letter to the court relinquishing her guardianship rights, and we would find a new guardian for me. The school administration and dormitory staff were prepared to assist us with this. This occurred in early November. However, she did not submit the renunciation until mid-January. By the end of January, she received a response from the court indicating that she could not simply abandon guardianship. She needed to provide documentation of a new guardian. Instead of asking us for it, we had already identified a new guardian and even had a backup person available. She suddenly altered her approach. She began blackmailing us over the funds, asserting that either she receives half of it or we do not receive any payments whatsoever. So, as a result, I have still not received my payments for January and February. Now, my mother has filed a formal complaint with social services, and tomorrow I must deliver it to the local office. I am unsure why I am sharing this here, but I just need to confirm one last time. Would I be the antagonist? Story 3. My boyfriend, 20M, took my job, 20F. How do I get past this? At that point, we had been together for a year and a half. We both worked at the same location, we had met elsewhere, and he had arranged for me to join him. But he worked various shifts during the day while I was on the night shift from 9 p.m. to 5:30 a.m., Monday to Friday. This schedule allowed me to use my mother's car, until I saved enough for my own, to commute to a full-time job, as I lived too far away for public transportation. Upon my hiring, a verbal agreement was established between the manager and me that as soon as I acquired my own vehicle, I would be shifted off the night shift. I realize now that I should have secured this in writing, and into a regular full-time position from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday to Friday. It is important to note that these jobs are low-paying and not a career path, but they align with my interests and greatly enhance my resume. In May 2024, I finally obtained my own car and approached the manager about transitioning from the night shift to this new daytime role. She acknowledged that I would be offered the position once it became available. She indicated it would be 3 weeks after our conversation. I spoke very positively about this job, frequently expressing how thrilled I was about leaving the demanding night shift. I brought it up consistently to him, friends, family, etc., as this shift was impacting me significantly. 3 weeks passed, and I had yet to receive any updates regarding the position. One Friday in June, my boyfriend and I had plans for the day, and he told me he would arrive at my place at 11 o'clock a.m. At 11 o'clock, he mentioned that the manager had called him in for a meeting. Several hours later, at 4 o'clock p.m., he finally arrived at my place. He casually sat down and initiated random conversation. After I pressed him for details about his meeting with the manager, he revealed that he had been there to sign the contract for the job I was promised. I was immediately hurt by the fact that he would even consider signing that contract, knowing how desperately I desired that position, especially since he was aware of the agreement made between the manager and me. I inquired about when this decision was made, to which he replied that she had called him in unexpectedly and offered him the job. When I questioned his reasoning for accepting the position, he became defensive and explained that it meant he could leave his unpredictable shifts. His schedule varied greatly, with him working most weekends, despite being supposed to have every other weekend off. He would sometimes work at 5 o'clock a.m. and other days at 1 o'clock p.m., and secure a stable schedule that would ultimately allow us more time together. This reasoning made sense if one lacked the details. However, it was far more complicated than that. He knew I was struggling to manage my work life, social life, and personal time due to this shift, and he was aware of the toll it was taking on my mental well-being. Moreover, he had listened to me express my excitement about this potential change. I would also have plenty of time to spend with him if I no longer slept all day and was at least working during the day, allowing us to enjoy our evenings together. After considering this situation, I realized a few things. For a contract to be drawn up for him, he must have already agreed to the position, meaning he had known about this for days without mentioning it to me. I told him that if he truly desired the job, he could have discussed it with me, and I would have been open to him accepting it. It occurred to me that he kept it from me because he recognized that he was acting hurtfully and was unwilling to confront my reactions, choosing instead to wait until the last moment when he was forced to reveal the truth. Unfortunately, I had a shift that night, and the manager was present. She called me into her office and explained that he had walked in and stated that if they did not offer him the position, he would leave for other opportunities. In their eagerness to keep him, they granted him the job. She offered me a shallow apology and suggested alternative positions, which I declined due to feeling hurt, angry, and betrayed by both my boyfriend and my manager. The following night, my boyfriend and I were supposed to attend a small gathering for one of his friends' birthdays together before returning to spend the night at my place. Ultimately, I decided I did not want to go but told him he could see them for a few hours before coming to my house for a discussion. While he was there, he informed me that he would not be coming to my place afterward. Instead, he planned to go home after the party. I told him that if he chose not to come and address what he had done, our relationship would be over, to which he simply replied, "Okay." The next day, he came to collect his belongings and returned mine, effectively ending our relationship. A week after our breakup, I learned that he had submitted his 2-week notice and left that position, ultimately deciding to pursue a different opportunity, leaving the position vacant once again. The manager sheepishly approached me and suggested that I take the position, a proposition I had to stifle a laugh at. I declined, stating I would remain in my current role until I found something else because they had hurt me too deeply. We had been apart for a few weeks when he reached out, and I ultimately agreed to give our relationship another chance. Now, 6 months later, whenever this incident arises, he refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoing. He has even mentioned that his mother sees absolutely nothing wrong with his actions. They assert that he was advancing his career. This position was not a step up from his previous role, only from mine, and that he was thinking of me by trying to align his work schedule so we could spend more time together. I recognize that this may not seem like a significant issue, but it is the principle that matters. I would never obstruct his attempts to improve himself, secure a stable work schedule, escape a taxing shift, or pursue anything else similar. The fact that he did so and fails to recognize the pain he has caused raises concerns about my future with him. What are your thoughts? Am I being overly dramatic, or was he being unjust? Is there a way for me to help him understand my perspective on this?